Story 1. While driving home from work at night, a herd of over 20 deer ran out in front of my car, being chased by bats. Story 2. Bike riding with my husband at a speed of 8 to 10 miles per hour. I watched a squirrel run between his tires and under the pedals. The squirrel made it through, but the tip of its tail was run over by the back tire. The squirrel turned around and yelled at him. I could hardly believe it had made it. Story 3. I swear on my firstborn son that I saw a creature that can only be described as half monkey, half kangaroo. We have neither of these animals in my country. There were 5 sober people who all saw the animal. On my deathbed, my last words will be, beware of the kangonki. Story 4. I grew up in the mountains and spent a lot of time as a kid riding around on old logging roads with my cousins. One day, we were riding on a road we hadn't been on before and came across an old cabin. We decided to check it out, and inside we found what could only be described as an offering table. We ran outside and rode back to the house to tell my dad. He rode back with us, and when we returned, the cabin was burning. Story 5. I think I saw a comet or meteor burst. At first, it looked like a large shooting star, but not as fast and without colors, just white. Then it broke apart, and tiny pieces flew away until it completely disappeared. Story 6. When I was 17, I was closing the gas station where I worked by myself. I was emptying trash into the back dumpster in the dark when a truck sped down the adjacent alley with no lights on. A man was running after the truck while firing a gun. I froze as it happened and then called the police. They arrived about an hour later, confirmed that no one was hurt, and left because they were having a very busy night. It's astonishing to think that a 17-year-old was allowed to work alone at a gas station. This was in the late 1980s when there were still full-service and self-service pumps. Story 7. When I was driving southbound on Interstate 5 heading to Southern California before sunrise, I saw what looked like a sun pillar over the Sierra Nevada mountain range, around where Sequoia National Park is located. The unusual aspect was that there was no top or bottom to the pillar, unlike a typical sun pillar. It appeared as a rectangular doorway hovering just above the mountain range. I was so bewildered by it that I pulled off the freeway to try to take a picture from the shoulder. As I was coming to a stop, it suddenly turned dark and disappeared. Sunrise occurred about 40 minutes later. This happened about 8 years ago. Story 8. On July 11, 1991, in Mexico City, during the eclipse, there was a mass unidentified flying object sighting. It was even covered in an episode of Unsolved Mysteries. I was there, and it is the craziest thing I have ever seen, but I have no proof. Story 9. Walking home late at night by myself, I witnessed a stream of cats, a procession of at least 15 in a row, walk out of the woods, cross the road, and enter a graveyard together. Story 10. I was driving to my afternoon college classes on a sunny day. As I approached an intersection, I was struck by an uncanny feeling. Something wasn't right. It was as if my brain couldn't quite register what I was seeing. Why is there a house in the road? Who put this house here? As I got closer, I finally realized what had happened. A house was being transported by truck. This wasn't a prefabricated trailer either, but an actual 2-story suburban ranch. Somehow, the house had fallen off the trailer almost exactly in the middle of the intersection. I had to take a detour. Luckily, I was still able to get to class on time. That would have been an awkward excuse. Story 11. This extraordinarily beautiful golden, red, and blue bird, which I later identified as a golden pheasant, landed on my leg while I was sitting on a bench in Pennsylvania. It sat there and stared at me for what felt like an eternity, though it was probably only a few minutes. I didn't dare move, pooped on my shoe, and then flew away. They are not known to live in the area, and I have no idea where it came from or who to tell. All I had to show for it was a ruined shoe. Story 12. Around 2 a.m. one night, I went to stand on our porch and enjoy the rain. I watched the fixed shadow of a telegraph pole, cast by a streetlight, move 45 degrees to the right. There was no movement of the light sources. I have no explanation, but I know what I saw. Story 13. I currently live in Iceland, and I swear I saw something similar to the Aurora scene from Brother Bear in real life. Animals were running around in the lights as they changed shape. Story 14. For me, it was when I had sleep paralysis. No one was in my apartment that night. My roommates had gone home to their parents. Around 3 to 4 a.m., I heard someone sniffling in my room as if he had a blocked nose. I said to myself, "This can't be happening. If it happens again, I'll open my eyes and turn on the light." I heard it again just 2 seconds later. This time it was louder, as if it was closer to me. I opened my eyes and turned my head. I hadn't closed the shutters completely, so there was a bit of light in the room, and I saw a girl standing on the edge of my bed. I had to force myself to turn my head and close my eyes, and when I turned on the light, nothing happened. I didn't sleep all weekend after that. Story 15. I work in hospice. I witnessed a garbage can lid flip around multiple times. I was the only one in the room. Moments later, something white quickly moved into my periphery and then suddenly vanished. Story 16. I was helping out with an amazing race-style event in my city and was hiding in an old jail cell, waiting for teams to find me. One year, I heard footsteps coming down the hall. The footsteps sounded like dress shoes, not sneakers. No one was there. Another year, I heard a loud banging sound that I thought was a team trying to get in through a locked door. I ran to check, but no one was there, and the door didn't produce the right noise. While showing a team around later, we slammed the solitary confinement door, a heavy 6-inch thick wooden door, and I realized the sound I heard earlier was from that door. It sounded like someone was shaking the door as if trying to get out, but I was the only one down there at the time, and the door is too heavy to move on its own. Story 17. Not the most insane experience, but something I can't explain. I went to visit my parents who live in a very remote area. It was nighttime when I stepped out onto the porch to smoke. I heard someone walk from the driveway underneath the porch I was on. I could hear it clearly because the pathway and driveway are made of stones, making a distinct crunch underfoot. I tried to see who was beneath me, but visibility was poor in the dark. I went back inside to ask my parents who had been outside, only to find them both asleep. Yes, it could have been an animal, but it sounded like a person walking. Could have been a person, but my parents live deep in the countryside. You can't just walk to their house, so it was strange. Story 18. A roughly 35 to 40-foot disc-shaped object with a light orange and yellow plasma-like glow hovered over the Erie Canal between locks in Brighton and Pittsford, New York. It was silent when I first saw it while walking along the canal trail. The glow was not very bright, and I could look directly at it without discomfort. As I got closer, a faint hum began to emanate from it, gradually getting louder. Then, it shot straight up for a second or two before angling 45 degrees toward the north and disappearing. I have never witnessed anything move that fast since, and it's been 35 years. When I finally looked back down, I realized there were ripples in the water crashing against the two banks, and I could see the rings continuing down the canal in both directions. I felt scared, excited, and in awe. Some others with me also saw it as we hurried to the next lock and walked the rest of the way along the road. Story 19. About 20 years ago, I saw a massive nuclear weapon being transported to a secret base in the middle of the night, and as a result, I was held by the military for a few hours. That was cool in hindsight, but at the time, it was terrifying. Story 20. I work for a burial vault company that fabricates concrete burial vaults and columbariums. We collaborate closely with cemeteries and funeral homes. I am always first in the shop at 6 a.m. One morning, I turned on the warehouse lights and saw a man casually leaning against the wall, facing away from me. He was wearing blue overalls and a flat cap. I noticed white hair under his cap. When I turned 45 degrees to switch on another light and looked back, he had disappeared. I spent a good half hour in the bathroom contemplating what I had seen. I later found out that our boss's father always wore overalls when he visited the shop. Freaked me out, and I knew we didn't have cameras back there, so if I mentioned it, I would look crazy, but I know what I saw. Story 21. I stayed at the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast in Fall River, Massachusetts. The tour and accommodations were great. I was in Emma's room, which belonged to Lizzie's sister, and I noticed a blue light moving up and down the wall with no apparent source. It didn't scare me. In fact, I felt calm and peaceful. If you're interested in that kind of experience, I highly recommend visiting. Story 22. Around 1995, I was driving southbound on Interstate 75 in Florida. In the distance, from the northbound side, I saw a semi-truck barreling into the median. There was no barrier between the lanes back then, and grass was flying up in front of the truck. Behind it, flipping end over end into the median, came a long white motorboat. Story 23. In 2020, I was a big fan of a musician and social media influencer. He created a group chat on Instagram with all his younger fans. At the time, I didn't think much of it, but now I find it strange. I won't mention any names as I might be mistaken, but no one in that group chat was over 18, except for him, who was a fully grown adult. The phone I used got completely smashed, so I no longer have any proof. Story 24. I saw a strange-looking animal in the swamps of Louisiana. It resembled a gray wolf but was thin and had a feline head. It looked unusual. Story 25. I was in the woods with a friend and felt a dark presence. I looked to my left and saw a shadowy creature in the distance. My friend felt the presence but did not see the creature. I will admit that I was coming down from a mild acid trip. I only took half a hit, so I know I wasn't hallucinating. I think it may have been from another dimension. The woods we were in are rumored to have strong mystical energy. Story 26. When I was a child, I decided to watch a mosquito eat my leg just to see what happens when it becomes full. Kept eating and then exploded. I have never forgotten this experience, and I doubt anyone would believe me. Story 27. I just remembered this incident from when I was in second grade. We were all sitting at our desks as the teacher used her document camera to show us how to complete our assignments. She had to go to the other side of the classroom for a few seconds to help another student, leaving her papers under the camera, as she would be right back. Within 10 seconds of her stepping away, the papers went flying all over the floor. There was no vent nearby, and no students had touched the papers or even walked by. Story 28. I was flying out of South Korea. My girlfriend pointed out the window and asked, "What's that?" It's hard to judge, but I'd guess it was 3 to 10 miles away, appeared to be stationary, and at about the same elevation. It's tough to judge with no background, though. It was shaped roughly like the International Space Station, except one pair of the arms was much longer than the other. I looked up the International Space Station just to compare, but that's obviously not what it was. I was just grasping for answers. Picture a pencil silhouette with a crayon laid across it 1/3 down, and a chopstick across it another third down. It was shiny, like light reflecting off aluminum in the distance. I'd guess it had to be at least 50 feet long, but I think it was probably closer to 100 to 200 feet or more. Again, hard to judge. My girlfriend was uncurious in certain ways and just shrugged, going back to her movie. I was flipping out. This was the most unexplainable thing I'd ever seen. I would have started asking the people around me, "Are you seeing this?" But everyone was Korean. I thought about asking one of the flight attendants, but I had already learned they didn't really speak English either. I nudged her a couple of times and said, "This is insane and unexplainable, right?" She just didn't care and put her headphones back in. It made me feel unsettled. Like this was the weirdest and most unexplainable object I had ever seen, and I couldn't talk to anyone about it. It felt reminiscent of William Shatner from that old Twilight Zone episode with the gremlin on the wing. This was about 2 to 3 years ago, and every time I think of it, it haunts me. Whenever a question like this pops up, I have to mention it, hoping someone has some idea. I seriously doubt it was some type of balloon. The dimensions don't make sense, and it would have been twisting wildly at that elevation. I've never seen any aircraft like that, and it would have almost been going straight up or down if it was, yet it appeared stationary. I doubt it was aliens. My best guess is some strange North Korean experimental craft, but that doesn't seem plausible either. I don't know. It was just the weirdest and most unexplainable thing I have ever seen. Story 29. I saw something burn up in the atmosphere. It looked like something caught fire and then disappeared. It lasted only a couple of seconds. It was pretty cool, but no one believes me. Story 30. My sister is downstairs on the couch with her boyfriend. This happened twice around midnight while I was going to get something to eat. Story 31. An extant specimen of hallucigenia. I was 12 and didn't know what I was looking at. When I read about the species a decade later, it blew my mind. Story 32. I saw a squirrel minding its own business eating a nut. Then I saw a flash of feathers, and the squirrel was gone. Presumably, one of the local hawks ate it for breakfast. Nature can be harsh sometimes. Story 33. Driving to a friend's house at night, something jumped over my car. Later, I thought it must have been a kangaroo, but I still don't know what it was or if I was seeing things. Story 34. When I was about 8, roller skating with my siblings in the front yard. A crow flew down to the ground right next to us and clearly said, "Hello." We got it in our garage after it perched on my sister's head and then it dropped on her. It was someone's pet, and they came and got him. Story 35. I had seen two of the best, most popular, and well-respected married teachers, not with each other, but with other people, having a romantic date. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.